All right, and we are here again, and we are back again. As always, I'm Matt.
I'm Drew.
And this is the Back Again podcast. This is our rank episode. So we just finished season 1 of the Back Again podcast. We did a select list of Disney animated sequels. We took 12 out of there's like over 25, so who the fuck knows how many movies there are. But we watched 12 of those movies, and today we are kind of ranking them from 12 to 1, worst to best. This is kind of our wrap-up episode. It's a wrap-up of the season. We're going to rank some episodes, and then at the end of the episode, we will be making an announcement to which movies we're going to be doing for season 2 of the Back Again podcast. So make sure that you stick around for that. So before we kind of get into this ranking of all these 12 Disney movies, some things that I'll say about the season in hindsight. You know, I definitely went into this podcast and with this first season kind of looking for the answers to the question of why are these characters coming back again? Why is this movie this, original, and when I say like this movie, I mean like all the original movies that we love. What is it about making this one movie and then, having success off of it and then be like, well, we got to think of another story. So going into this first season, I definitely was more optimistic into thinking that there would be more effort put into a lot of these sequels. And I think we shot ourselves in the foot because we kind of avoided certain Disney animated sequels that we knew would be better. We instead of going for the ones that we thought would be the easy ones, like maybe Lion King 2 or
Frozen 2
or
Lilo and Stitch 2. Krunk's New Groove, I think, is actually supposed to be good too.
I think that there are sequels that are kind of non-offensive but just insignificant, and then there are sequels that are probably just better because they're more modern. But in general, we really wanted to focus on that like early 2000 era where their animation was just getting a little bit better. So they're like, all right, let's go take all our classics and let's do classic Disney 2.0. But I would argue that classic Disney 2.0 was just, for most part, was just a lot of bad animation, was a lot of, repeated story tropes, a lot of repeated villains, and as far as what the villains wanted, were often the same thing as the first movie. So overall, I think I had higher expectations going into the Disney kind of animated sequel verse, but it was a little bit more rough than I anticipated, but I think that was based off of the selections that we did. And then on top of that, I'll finish this up with saying that I do think it was a somewhat successful season at looking at just their overall significance in the kind of whole concept of what a sequel is and why you would even go back again. So I got to see a lot why they went back again, and I think we did a good job at least deciding which ones are worth going back again.
Going into the season, I definitely had higher hopes too. But at the same time, you have to understand what these movies are. I think Hunter kind of said it best. Because you and I were going in very analytical and just like, how do these function as sequels? And Hunter was the one that just kind of said, like, these sequels are all kind of made for kids. So I think it kind of had something to do with the TV shows. I don't know how the bureaucracy or the functionality worked behind the scenes, but it seems to me like they were possibly making these movies for like the Disney Channel, maybe like with the intention of running them on the Disney Channel after they had kind of been released on video or something. It felt like there were definitely ulterior motives, but that they were beyond, we just need money. It felt like they were almost used as props for something else, whether it be these TV shows or whether it be the Disney Channel or direct-to-video sales, whatever.
Yeah, there was a lot of direct-to-video, like, Disney Channel home video presents at the beginning of this.
So kind of just like knowing that, and I felt like it was kind of clear what we were getting ourselves into. I still kind of wanted to die at the like kind of coming toward the middle of the season because we had just a big run of just pitfalls, it seemed like.
Yeah.
But we got through it. We got some good ones. We got some good info. Yeah, I think it was an exciting season overall.
So before we jump into the ranking of the 12 movies, here's some honorable mentions or some back again fun facts, as we like to say. So looking back at the season, we broke down each movie into 3 questions that led to a final vote. Now, every movie was done this way except for the first episode, Aladdin, just because we didn't add the does it need to exist until the Little Mermaid episode. But pretty much they were broken down into checks and X's. And interestingly enough, if you look at the season as a whole, we gave in total to all 12 Disney animated sequel movies 25 checks and 48 X's. So we had a lot more X's
Sounds right.
than checks to give in this season. As far as movies that passed that had more checks than X's, only 3 movies passed our voting system and 9 movies failed. So of those 3 movies that passed, it was Aladdin and the King of Thieves, Lady and the Tramp 2, Scamp's Adventure, and Fantasia 2000. Outside of those 3 movies, every other movie pretty much got mostly X's. Now, some of them got asterisks put next to them where there were elements to the movie that were enjoyable or that we weren't completely sold that it was a waste of time, that you could get something out of it if you watched it. But as a whole, like we were saying earlier, not a lot of checks throughout the season, a lot of X's. Another special mention, looking back at the whole season, is reoccurring actors and actresses that come back for some of these voice roles. We got John Rhys Davies, who plays multiple characters in the Disney sequel franchise. We got Haley Joel Osment. We got Cree Summer, and we have Tara Strong. I'm sure that there are more that we missed, but I got to 4, and I thought that's enough. So if there are more reoccurring voice talent, I believe you, and awesome. And then the last special mention is going to be Tad Stones, who directed at least 2 of these Disney animated sequels. We know he directed half of Atlantis, or a third of Atlantis. So we got some recurring actors, we got some recurring directors. And I think that's going to be all the special mentions. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this ranking list of season 1 of the Back Again podcast with Disney animated sequels. So first up is number 12, last place. And we probably both have the same answer for this, but my number 12 is Tarzan and Jane.
Mine is as well.
Okay. Yeah, this movie was absolutely probably the worst of all the movies we had to watch this first season. Right out the gate, the animation was horrible. There was no effort put in to the story. And then to top it all off, you did research and we found out that this was just 3 episodes of the Tarzan show that they just kind of put into they put into a movie format, and they just made a movie.
It wasn't even a real movie. We should have just taken it off the list.
Well, it is a real movie in the sense of it's a movie, but it's not a movie in the sense of them deciding like, hey, let's make a movie. It was like, oh, you know what? We got this stuff. Can we turn this into a movie? Like the whole movie is actually a question of, is this a movie?
That's pretty much exactly what it is.
Special mentions from that episode, though, is our boy.
Alexis Denisov.
From Buffy and from Angel, but mostly from Buffy.
Yeah, that was the only good thing about the episode.
Only saving grace was being able to hear that sweet British voice. So moving on to the list, number 11. And I don't know if you want to go first or me.
You go ahead, go first.
So my number 11 is Atlantis, Milo's Return.
Okay, that makes sense.
And the reason why this is my number 11 is because just based off the animation alone, this is another one of those movies where it just looks horrible right from the start. It looks just like a TV show. And then we did some more research and we found out that it wasn't as intentional as Tarzan and Jane, but they were in a situation where they were going to make a TV show. It didn't end up working out. And they said, well, we have all these scripts from this kind of failed TV show. Let's just take the 3 best and turned it into a movie. And that's what they did. And that's why you kind of have 6 different writers and you have 3 directors. So yeah, that if Tarzan and Jane was like horrible to get through, this was just a little better to get through, but it was still really, really bad. So that's my number 11.
My number 11 is The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I gotta give this just slightly better than Tarzan and Jane, but still pretty shitty, just for the fact that it just did not need to exist based on the source material. I think it has worse animation than Atlantis, if you want to include that. I don't hold animation to that high a standard, but I do think it's worse than Atlantis. And just the undoing that it does of the original source material. This was a real stinker. It had some potential that was completely unrealized, and it just has to be number 11 on my list. It is a true movie, so it is a half step above Tarzan and Jane, but it is still the worst on the list, I would say.
Yeah, I can understand that. And even to lead into then our number 10, my number 10 is Hunchback of Notre Dame 2. So that's going to be my number 10, mostly for the reasons that you said. I think the animation is a little bit better than Atlantis, but it still is pretty horrible. And then not to mention the whole love storyline with Quasimodo and Jennifer Love Hewitt. It just, these kind of bottom 3 on the list are all just really bad animation, I think is kind of what fills that out. So that's my number 10.
That is definitely one thing that unites all of these. My number 10 is Atlantis, so okay. We have a little switcheroo right there. I hold Atlantis to slightly higher esteem because at least it had some good ideas it was playing with. Hunchback just didn't have that. Atlantis did. I thought that it elevated it just a little bit. Can you go mention specifically why you would say Hunchback is higher than Atlantis?
Because Hunchback is at least a movie. Like, from what I know from the research that we did, it is not a failed television show. So these first, 12 and 11 for me are like not even movies. They're just, they're just leftover scripts that they decided to try to salvage what they could. Whereas for me now, the list kind of really starts at 10 with Hunchback 2 being like, all right, this is the worst animation of the rest of the list, but it's ranked a little higher than Tarzan and Jane and Atlantis because at least it's a true sequel.
I understand. Those ideas for Atlantis, I just hold those two a little bit higher, so I get it.
Well, yeah, you like those concepts, or at least those ideas that they went with.
And even if they fall flat, at least they were trying. Hunchback, there just didn't seem to be any effort. Did we want to give Haley Joel Osment a little shout out for Hunchback?
I mean, you just did.
Nice.
All right, so now we are moving on to number 9.
I feel like this is where the list can really start.
Yeah, because our 12 through 10 are pretty much the same, just a little interchangeable. But number 9 for me is going to be Pocahontas 2. And the reason it's going to be Pocahontas 2 is because I felt like out of all these Disney sequels, Pocahontas, the first one, is already kind of controversial. And then when they make the second one, they try to kind of redo their wrongs by saying like, no, well, Pocahontas would never fall for John Smith, but she's going to fall for this other white guy named John Ralphio. And the animation is decent in Pocahontas 2, and some of the music is good. But, there's a whole storyline where she's got to, look pretty for a ball, and pretty much the villain is just trying to get, revenge 2.0. So, in regards to the rest of the movies on this list, I thought that it was well executed, and I thought they put effort into it. But the franchise is just so exhausting. And making a second movie to such, an exhausting original movie and trying to right your wrongs and make it a little kind of cleaner, I respect the effort they put into it, but it is the weakest concept and execution from the rest of this list, I would say.
My number 9 is also Pocahontas.
Ooh.
It was, whereas I could see kind of you saw it lacking, I saw it as still kind of in the cluster of actually bad or detrimental movies. Just the themes it plays with are just to me. Especially with the wasted potential where, as opposed to Hunchback, like I kind of mentioned in the review, this was a original idea that could have done some fun things or some fun twists with the sequel, and it just completely didn't. All it did was finally acknowledge that John Smith might not be the best guy, and it kind of just stagnated from there.
I can say this, it would probably be higher on my list if Pocahontas didn't end up with a guy at the end of the movie.
That was really disappointing, yeah. That really is a big part of why I would place it definitely below 6.
Why can't Pocahontas fall in love with someone in her tribe?
They tease that in the first one, but she wants something different. That's her whole thing.
Oh my god, yeah, she wants just a white guy that's still part of a corrupt government, but he hasn't pulled the trigger yet. That's the message. You got to catch the guy before he pulls the trigger. So we both have the same number 9. So now we're going to move on to number 8.
Let's see if we can switch it up a little bit.
Yeah, why don't you tell me your number 8?
All right, my number 8, kind of going into the not necessarily as bad, but kind of the more forgettable, is Mulan 2.
Okay.
Very similar to Pocahontas, I think, with the themes that it was trying to play with. I could see the themes themselves being a little bit more effective just because Mulan, I believe, is better source material and it didn't stray too far away from that. It didn't have to do anything too complicated with flipping the script on its head like Pocahontas probably should have done. But where it suffers for me and why it's so low on the list, just above Pocahontas, is because of issues with plot. Character, I'm not so much. I'm more lukewarm about. Nothing really seemed to change, but then again, nothing really seemed to be detrimental, except for Mushu's character, which I still don't really like that much. But the plot's just all over the place. The plot is just there to service. The plot's just there to get the movie done, it sounds like, or it seems like, because so much is forgotten, so much is brought up and then never, referenced again, so much is built up as important and then just kind of shoot away when more important things, emerge for the characters to react to. Like I said, essentially just a slightly stronger thematic version of Pocahontas, but still with the same weaknesses that you see in a lot of these other Disney sequels that place lower on the list.
Yeah. My number 8 is going to be Bambi 2.
Oh, okay.
Interesting enough. The reason why this is my number 8 right after Pocahontas, because this isn't a sequel. This is a prequel. So, after the events of the first Bambi, they jump forward to the future in the first Bambi. But then with Bambi 2, they stay back to see what happened between Bambi and his father, played by Patrick Stewart. And to me, since it's not a sequel and it's also not the most offensive thing on the list, it does get that number 8 spot. I believe actually it was number 8, episode 4. It's just like Hunchback was number 10, episode 4. So that's kind of interesting. But it is number 8 for me because it's not a true sequel. It is a prequel. There were some elements to the movie that I liked. There were some elements to the animation that I liked. But overall, only 30 minutes of the movie worked for me. So it's going to get that number 8 spot on my list.
Okay.
And then interesting enough, if now that we jump into number 7, my number 7 is Mulan 2. So without kind of repeating what you said, the only thing that I'll add to the conversation, because yes, the plot is very convoluted, it switches up a lot. The characters are reliant on becoming dumb because they need Mushu to be successful at some of his tricks. But the only reason why this is my number 7 opposed to my number 8 is because some of the animation is good, especially when they do serious stuff. Some of the conversations they have are useful, but it is more a weaker sequel to me because the first Mulan is so good. And when your first movie is so good, and then you jump to this animation that is so much more kind of TV friendly, and when your first movie doesn't tell you the themes, but it shows you the themes, and it shows you your protagonist doing stuff, versus the sequel where she's just kind of saying things and she's complaining. Like I just thought it was a step back for me. So even though there's a lot of things I like about that movie, I think there's some things you can get out of Mulan 2 that are useful. I think the cast is great. I think the music's pretty good. It's just one of those things where it's like, man, if you can't do it the way you did the first time, I don't even know why you're doing it again.
My number 7 is Lady and the Tramp 2.
Ooh.
Scamp's Adventure.
Wow.
Very, very just inoffensive to me. There was definitely some stuff I liked. The new characters were interesting. Scamp Angel, the Junkyard Dogs to an extent, at least as far as side characters go. So what brings it down to a 7 out of 12 for me is, and I brought this up a lot in the actual review, is the fact that the title characters just aren't there. Lady's absent and Tramp is just completely reactionary to the plot. I did like the animation. I could see the animation being a lot better than a lot of the other films on this list. There were plot elements that I liked. The flashback telling Tramp's story, the hero shot of Tramp, like pretty brief moments, but still things that kind of elevated a little bit from like the dredges of this list. So I don't have a whole lot to say about it. It's very weak on theme, but what isn't on this list? Kind of average for me, 7 out of 12.
Yeah. So we're going to now move on to number 6. So what's your number 6?
My number 6 is Aladdin, King of Thieves.
Oof.
Again, with the middle of the list, I don't have a lot to say. There's some stuff I liked, there's some stuff I didn't like, but at the end of the day, this was just one of the more forgettable ones for me.
It's the only movie on the list that is the third movie of the franchise. And we did that consciously because this is the one where Rob Williams comes back.
Yeah, it is an exception, but it's not like a blatant exception, I don't think. I thought Robin Williams elevated it to a 6, but the themes that they're dealing with, even though they're explored and kind of touched on, they kind of just dabble with, like we see in a lot of these bigger franchise movies. I appreciate they didn't really dance over it because there's a lot of father-son issues we see in these sequels and just with Disney in general, and they really dance over them with songs. I don't really believe that they did that too much with Aladdin. I feel like there was actually some tension with the characters, and that's what kind of brought it up a little bit for me as well. But at the end of the day, the villain is forgettable. The plot, fairly forgettable. I do like that Aladdin and Kasim do spend some time together, and their relationship isn't really as glossed over, but so much of the plot is, so much of the themes are, it's just kind of just middle of the list, kind of in purgatory for me.
If Robin Williams didn't return as the genie, where would this movie rank on your list?
Probably just like 7 or 8.
Okay, so it's just a couple spots.
Much,
kind of, all right. So my number 6 is actually Little Mermaid 2. And the reason why this is right outside my top 5 is because it was enjoyable / entertaining, what I remember. The musical numbers were good. The animation was good. And it was one of the few sequels where the daughter of the protagonist from the original was actually better than the protagonist from the original. So I felt that Melody was a lot better than Ariel, just as far as motivation, just as far as overall just appeal. Like I related a lot more to her. Her desire in life had nothing to do with a man. It had to do with like, you know, finding herself in the ocean and finding out what like family means and where you come from and why that matters and stuff. I like also Tip and Dash in that movie as well. So I rank that one higher above like a Mulan 2 or Pocahontas 2 because I don't think The Little Mermaid is very good. I think there are good elements to it, but I thought that they executed things better outside of the villain, but they executed things better in Little Mermaid 2, and they just made it, enjoyable. So for me, that's my number 6. All right, so let's move on down to number 5, top 5. I guess we'll top 6 since it's 12, but we're moving on to number 5. So my number 5 is 102 Dalmatians, live action with Glenn Close. And the reason this makes it into my top 5 is very biased, and it's not the best reasoning, but it's just because of Glenn Close. It's her performance is the only reason why that movie works. It's the only reason really why we watch that movie, and it's the only reason why it makes it into my top 5. The fact that she's just having fun, and considering on this list that there are so many returning villains that kind of do the same thing as the first one, Glenn Close is the only one, and her advantage is that this is live action. You do actually get to see Glenn Close act. But she's the only villain that knows, or at least realizes, that it's ridiculous that she's back again. So she's just gonna ham it up. So I really like the fact that she's having fun with it. And it was a nice switch up from what we were watching, but yeah, that's my number 5.
My number 5 is Bambi 2.
Oh, wow.
It placed a little higher on the list for me. I'm not as beholden to the prequel rule as you are. It's actually technically an interquel because it takes place in the middle of the original movie. But yeah, there is a lot of shitty stuff about it, especially in regards to the side characters. Everything, honestly, that's not directly related to the story about about Bambi and his father is kind of annoying superbly, but that core story and the way it's told insofar as bringing the hunters back, making them a threat, and portraying them as a threat the same way the original did, and sticking to that familiar art style, that really did bring it up the list for me.
You probably also just did that because Patrick Stewart is the father and you like Picard.
I don't like Picard anymore. Don't use any of this.
I think that's interesting that that's your number 5, considering that that's my number 8. But, I guess the only kind of similar factor is the father angle with like Aladdin and his father and Bambi and his father. They're both bad fathers. But I always think there's something interesting about Bambi too, where Patrick Stewart's like, oh, I gotta raise my son. And he doesn't even raise him all the way. Like, he gives him away like in the beginning of the 3rd act of that movie.
They found an interesting way to tell a story with this sequel, and they were able to maintain the same tone, especially when it came to danger and threats that they did in the original. And even if I don't like that necessarily, I can respect it, and that, that's what elevates it a little bit more for me.
All right. So now we're moving on to number 4. And my number 4, interestingly enough, what did you say your Lady and the Tramp 2 was?
Lady and the Tramp is down at 7 for me.
So this is my number 4. Ooh. Lady and the Tramp 2, Scamp's Adventure. The reason that this is in my top 5, and this is actually my number 4, is... Well, I'll say this. I agree with everything that you said in regards to why it's number 7 in a negative context. However, I will say that out of all the sequels on the list, this one is in the more effort range. The original movie comes out in 1955. They make this movie in 2001. And I think some of the musical numbers are pretty good. I like the Tramp Harrison Ford fugitive flashback when he jumps off the cliff. But in general, I thought that the new characters that they added were good. I thought they paid homage to the original. And in regards to a movie about a day in the life that turns into something else, and I say that because the original is a movie about the day in the life of dogs and then it turns into a romantic comedy or just a romance movie. This one, they add more stuff to the story. So it is a day in the life, but then they kind of, they add a villain, they add in some scenarios. So I just thought the animation, the musicals, and just the overall direction of it and really just trying to keep you engaged and entertained the whole time. I thought that they succeeded on a lot of that stuff, and I can see a kid watching that movie and actually liking it more than the original Lady and the Tramp. So for me, that's why it's my number 4.
My number 4 is Jungle Book 2. And what I'm realizing as I'm going through this list for kind of like the 10th time and just kind of judging my decisions, I'm realizing that I'm doing this not necessarily based on my enjoyment of the movies, but more on how I think they function as successful Disney sequels. Kind of like ticking the box that Disney specifically is trying to tick with these movies, or at least kind of what a Disney fan thinks they should be focused on, or someone who can at least identify with a Disney fan. The reason Jungle Book 2 works for me more than a lot of these other movies isn't necessarily the plot or the themes, which are what I really try to stick to when it's just my personal preference on movies. The reason this is so high on my list is because it succeeds with the music, where a lot of these other movies do not. I think they fall flat on their face 100% of the time, except for Jungle Book 2. And it succeeds on characters and bringing back the characters in a way that is familiar but not repetitive. And I think that helps a lot with the cast in this movie. And I think it helps a lot with just the way that the characters were envisioned. I think that the new characters that are introduced are a little bit weaker, but what matters in these sequels to me a little bit more is the main characters, the original characters, and where they are now. And where there's not necessarily a whole lot of development with those characters for Jungle Book 2, there is a lot of they are able to capture who those characters are so many years after the fact. So I think there is something to kind of be said about that.
Yeah, and I'll actually take that and I'll start jumping into our number 3, because my number 3 is Jungle Book 2.
Nice.
And to not continue on with what you said, but if it wasn't for the cast and if it wasn't for the fast-paced storytelling and all the jokes and all the music, this movie would probably be way lower on the list. And Jungle Book and Lady and the Tramp 2, they're kind of similar in the sense to where the plot and the themes don't really work. Oftentimes the characters from the original contradict themselves in the sequel, mostly with like Tramp and Mowgli. But to focus just on the Jungle Book 2, you know, I think that Mowgli is so annoying in the second one. I think he is a huge step back. But the voice cast and the animation, the direction of it with a lot of these musical numbers, just with how they kind of just make everything pop. And like I said, and like you said too, the musical numbers themselves, they are really good and they're entertaining. So this movie is the most interesting because it's probably the most entertaining, the most engaging, and the most impressive. But the plot, the characters, and the theme, they are all just like completely retracted from the first one in this one. And it's just the least offensive on the list. Whereas in all these movies kind of do this where they kind of make their protagonists take a step back. But with this one, they just do a really good job of hiding it by just making really good music and really good animation. So that's my number 3.
My number 3 is going to be 102 Dalmatians.
Wow. Glenn Close, both of our top 5s.
I don't want to necessarily say it was all Glenn Close, even though a good portion of it was, but I do feel like some credit is given to the way that Cruella de Vil was written. But then it kind of fails on every other front. The comedy I did like, especially when Cruella, the villain, was involved. And then all of her cohorts were great, and the fact that she took up a lot of the screen time was great. That's why it's, up to 3. If it was a normal villain, or if she had normal villain screen time, it would be probably more down at like 7 or 8. But because she has so much screen time, because she's such a presence, and because she was relatively well written, that's what's gonna put it up there for me. On top of that, I've been thinking more and more about what you were saying in regards to the prequel that's been in production starring Emma Stone, and the fact that this movie was somewhat necessary for that movie to be made. And even though I don't necessarily agree with that 100%, I did take that into consideration when kind of placing this on the list, and that bumped it up, I think, from maybe a 4 to a 3 for me.
Okay.
Because I do, even though I have not seen that prequel yet, that prequel hasn't been released, I do believe that at least it's set up to be really good.
Yeah, watch out, Emma Stone. We're coming for you when we do the prequel podcast.
Back from the past.
Back from the past.
Yeah.
There you go.
The prequel podcast. Trademark.
All right, so number 2. And interesting enough, where did Aladdin rank on yours?
Down there. It was 6 for me.
6 for you. Aladdin 3, King of Thieves is going to be my number 2. And the reason why is because just in regards to the villain problem with Disney sequels, I actually like the villain in this movie, which was played by Sakul or Saluk. I don't remember which one. Sakul. Yeah. Which is Jay Orbach. I actually liked his villain a lot. I liked his plan. I thought it was actually smart to some degree. I like the fact that Robin Williams comes back. I think that even though it sounds like they only used him for a day, he does elevate the movie a lot. And the plot wasn't offensive or anything. It was basic and bland, but it still was more interesting and engaging than the rest of these. I know that it's cliche and eye-rolling to do the whole, I got to get back in time for my wedding, or I have to decide whether or not to, go to my wedding or save my dad, or all of a sudden I have to like my dad because he's showing up in my life on like the day before or the day of my wedding just to rob everyone and stuff. But outside of all that stuff, the musical numbers were really good. It's a pretty quick movie. And overall, it kind of wraps it up nicely. And I thought that it was a good way to start the podcast. I still think it's one of the stronger stories of the whole Disney sequel verse. So I'm being a little bit more considerate, but with all the different variables kind of mixed together and then, you know, sticking your head in the pot and looking at it, I think Aladdin 3 kind of floats to the top faster than the others. So that's my number 2.
So my number 2 is Little Mermaid 2. Whereas the other movies on this list, like kind of at the top of this list, like Dalmatians or Jungle Book, were kind of functioning very strongly on one level when it came with the villain or the songs. Little Mermaid 2, I think, functioned on a lot more levels, just not necessarily as to the same degree. I think it had a great protagonist. I think it had a adequate villain. I think it had great side characters. This might be the only movie on the list with good original side characters in the sequel.
Well,
Dip and Dash.
It's interesting that this is your number 2, since this movie kind of started off the villain problem that we had with a lot of these movies, which was Morgana was the same as Ursula, and then every movie we watched after the fact, we kind of saw a retreading of that. The only difference is I don't believe any other sequel has a different villain that has the same end goal. Most of them were just the same villain returns.
I wouldn't see it as that. I see Morgana as very indicative of... I see Morgana as a good example of what Disney was trying to do with their villains. With Cruella de Vil doing her revenge thing, that was great, but it was still because of Glenn Close, not necessarily because of Cruella. With Morgana, we're doing a classic revenge plot, but we actually have a new character, which is interesting. And then on top of that, we are poking fun at the fact that it is just a retreading of the same villain's plot, which even though I don't think they do it extensively or at least near enough in the movie, they do at least hint at it, so it does register that they were conscious of it. So I thought, even though I didn't think the villain was necessarily handled well, I thought she was handled smart. Same thing with the side characters, same thing with the protagonist, and this is just straight up, I think, one of the few sequels on this list that I think was better than the original.
Yeah,
so that's why it's got to be like number 2 for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's definitely better than the original. It's interesting kind of how we both have kind of gotten through 12 through 2 with this. But here we are. We're at number 1, and I mean, if you're looking at the list right now on screen, it's pretty obvious which our number 1 is, and Fantasia 2000.
Fantasia is definitely my number 1. It's the one that I grew up with. It is the one that I think is objectively the best one given all of these sequels, whereas we didn't watch the other objectively, you know, well-received sequels like Lion King 2 maybe.
Yeah.
This is definitely, of the ones we did watch, this is definitely the best on the list.
It was the easiest to watch too. I mean, it's kind of unfair to the list. I mean, if you removed our number 1s and you took our number 2s and number 1s, it would be Aladdin and Little Mermaid 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, they put a lot of effort into Fantasia 2000 with the animation, with the music. The host segments were really cheesy, like we said in our last episode. But yeah, I mean, it was really visually engaging, and I thought the themes like played with your emotions good, and I thought they made you kind of feel, even if it was for a short span of time, and it was just overall a good watch and an easy watch.
Definitely the one that I would recommend.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
just almost just to anyone.
Well, it's like we said, it's one of the few sequels where not only is it necessary that they do a continuation of this, but they also excel by doing a continuation of this. They're able to, you know, not diminish from what they did in the past, but kind of exceed it and also pay respect to it at the same time.
This is definitely one of the examples, I think, the only example on the list where the original kind of set them up and then the sequel just knocked it out of the park. Really good original, or at least on a concept level, and then a great follow-up that I think really kind of showed what the original was really about.
Yeah, and it was a good way to kind of wrap it up after watching all these sequels and kind of different tastes in our mouth. It was a nice
something new, yeah.
Yeah. So that's gonna be our ranking of 12 through 1 of the Disney animated sequel list. Obviously, we didn't do every Disney movie, so if there's any movies that you thought that we missed, or you think that any movies bring anything interesting to the table, please comment below. Let us know what your rank is of this season. Do you agree with our ranks? Do you disagree? Tell us in the comments below where you would place some of these movies. But overall, I think it was a good first season as far as doing this. I look forward to taking this voting of Worth Going Back Again and now applying it to other aspects of sequel verses. And with that being said, I think this would be a good time to announce what our season 2 is going to be. And season 2 of the Back Again podcast is going to be action movies. So starting very soon, we will be putting out reviews for our top 12 action movie sequels. And the rules are pretty simple with this. They made one action movie, it was successful, and then because of that success, they decided to come back again. And we're going to pick those 12 that we think is the most interesting, and we're going to decide if, in fact, it is worth going back, again. Yeah, and outside of that, we thank you for listening to this first season. And make sure you like, subscribe. Like I said, make sure you comment below. And, everybody stay safe out there. And we look forward to coming back for our second season of the Back Again podcast. But yeah, that's going to be a wrap on season 1. And you got anything else to add, Drew?
Can't wait till next season. we gotta watch some actual movies.
Yeah, it'll get a little easier for us. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and we hope that you are too. So if that's it, I guess we will see you here again, back again, on the Back Again podcast. See you next season.